Welcome to the Podkey summary of Steve Morison. Steve Morison's story is one of those football careers that still feels refreshingly unlikely. He went from part-time non-league football and pre-dawn shifts at a paper shredding company to Wembley finals, Premier League goals, Wales caps, and then straight into the churn of coaching and management. What ties it all together is how much of it was built the hard way, with timing, persistence, and a very clear sense of what kind of player he was. Before any of the bigger stages, Morison had the kind of start that can end careers before they really begin. After leaving Northampton Town, opportunities were limited, and he dropped into part-time football with Bishop Stortford while working early shifts at a paper shredding company. That's a pretty sharp contrast with where he ended up, and it's also why his breakthrough at Stevenage matters so much. At Stevenage, he didn't just rebuild his career, he exploded into form. He scored 89 goals in 152 appearances, became the club's second highest scorer, and in 2006-07 alone hit 34 in 53 games. That stretch turned him into one of the clearest examples of the non-league route still leading somewhere big. Wembley kept showing up at key moments in his career, almost like Morison had a habit of arriving there when something important needed deciding. With Stevenage, he scored the winning goal in the 2007 FA Trophy final, which was the first competitive cup final at the new Wembley Stadium. He won that competition again in 2009, so the place was already stitched into his career pretty early. Then, with Millwall, Wembley became even more central. He helped them win promotion in the 2010 League One playoff final, and years later, he scored the decisive goal in the 2017 League One playoff final against Bradford City. That one was an 85th-minute volley, and it sent Millwall back to the championship. Across 3 spells at Millwall, he made 343 appearances and scored 92 goals, which puts him third on the club's all-time scoring list. For a player who came through the long way round, that's a serious footprint at one club. His move from Millwall to Norwich in 2011 came with a pretty simple motivation. He wanted his shot at the Premier League and knew he might not get many chances at it. Earlier bids had been rejected. Morison had put in a transfer request, and Norwich finally got the deal done with a 4th offer. That urgency makes sense when you look at how quickly football can shut doors. And at first, it looked like the move had landed exactly right. He scored 10 Premier League goals in his first season for Norwich, which is a very solid return, and one of the standouts was a late equalizer from a tight angle in a 3-3 draw at Arsenal. After that, a managerial change altered things quite a bit. He was used largely as a substitute, and later moved to Leeds in a swap deal involving Luciano Becchio. Morison was never really framed as a flair player, and that actually helps explain both his rise and his staying power. He was valued for positioning, height, pace, strength, and being a real aerial threat. Managers talked about him as someone who was always in the right place and exactly the sort of physical forward defenders hate dealing with. What's interesting is that his game wasn't treated as something fixed. At Stevenage, Graham Wesley sent him to a specialist training camp to work on acceleration and agility. So even though Morison had the obvious size and presence, there was deliberate development in the details too. By the time his style was being summed up later on, the description was fearless and all action, which feels about right. His international career had its own unusual shape. He had represented the England C team at non-league level, but he was eligible for Wales through his grandmother and went on to win 20 caps. That jump alone is unusual enough, from England's non-league representative side to a senior national team. He scored once for Wales, and it mattered. In September 2011, his close-range finish against Montenegro secured a 2-1 win and gave Wales their first victory in that Euro 2012 qualifying group. It's another chapter in the same pattern, not the standard route, but a route that kept opening because he kept producing. After retiring in October 2019, Morison moved immediately into coaching, starting at Northampton Town and then joining Cardiff City's under-23 setup. He became Cardiff's caretaker manager in October 2021 after 8 straight defeats, which is about as calm and welcoming a handover as a car with no brakes. But he did enough to earn the job permanently. A 3-3 comeback against Stoke and a win over Huddersfield helped convince the club, and once he had the role, he was praised for giving Cardiff a more attacking and more identifiable style. He even picked up the Championship Manager of the Month award for March 2022. The other side of that spell was his bluntness. His public criticism of players brought backlash, and later he admitted he had been too honest. By September 2022, after a poor start to the next season, he was out. That contrast carried over into the next phase of his managerial career too. At Hornchurch, the results were excellent. 16 wins, 5 draws, and 1 defeat in his first 22 league matches. Their chairman called it one of the most impressive first halves of a season in the club's history. Then, after just 6 months, Morison left abruptly to take over struggling Sutton United. At Sutton, there was another quick upswing, with 4 straight wins that briefly lifted the club out of the relegation zone. But they were still relegated from League Two in 2024. He then guided Sutton to 12th in the National League, before leaving by mutual consent in September 2025, after 1 win in 9 matches. It's a pretty vivid snapshot of management as a profession. A few months can make you look like a savior or a problem, sometimes both in the same job. His post-playing life has now moved a little away from direct first-team management and toward development work at Leicester City. As loans manager, he oversees the loan program and academy player progression. That role actually suits the shape of his own career. He knows non-league, the EFL, the Premier League, and international football from the inside, and he finished his playing days with 242 goals in 697 appearances. That's a broad base of experience for judging what young players need when they leave the academy bubble and start dealing with senior football, where the game gets more physical, more unforgiving, and generally less interested in potential as a concept. Morison's career doesn't read like a straight climb. It reads like a series of hard turns that he kept managing to turn into something useful. From shredding paper before sunrise to scoring at Wembley and then helping shape younger players, there's a lot in that path that feels earned in the truest sense. This episode was generated by Podkey. Create your own at podkey.fm.